It's my great pleasure to introduce you today the 2011 Tucano display. Dan's pulling 5G now before rolling through 360 degrees. And then he'll roll through a further 180 to put himself upside down before pulling through to complete the half cubic. And as Dan rolls upside down for the next manoeuvre, you'll get the first chance to see the 2011 unique paint scheme in all its glory. The scheme was designed to have a contrast effect, the top side being silver and the underside of the aircraft a dark blue. And the red, white and blue flashes on the wing and tailplane, representing the colours of the Royal Air Force roundel and of course the Union Jack. I'd like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to Babcock Engineering, as well as Cobham Aviation up the road in Bournemouth, without whom we would not have had the support to paint this year's display aircraft. So thank you very much from all of us on the team. He's the youngest ever RAF Tucano display pilot. He's also the proud member of a select group of young RAF pilots known as Creamies, and the reason for this nickname is when he completed half of his Hawk training and was selected to fly the Tucano. This process is known in the Air Force as being creamed off, hence the name. Right, ladies and gentlemen,
Sean is now a flight lieutenant in the Royal Air Force. Later on today we'll be seeing another airman who also made the transition from ground duties to be a pilot, and in fact retired as an air marshal. And he'll be flying in our Battle of Britain Scramble later on today, and I'll introduce you to him. And take them to Boscombe Down and assemble them into one big bit and then fly them. The Nat started off as a private venture, designed by and take them to Boscombe Down and assemble them into one big bit and then fly them. The Nat started off as a private venture, designed by the prettiest aircraft, and it became the RAF standard advanced jet trainer when they put a second seat in it. Just supersonic, and of course it was the mount of the Red Arrows in the Ray Hanna era. The Red Arrows flew these aircraft and charmed the world. Tiny, tiny little aeroplane, and I have a number of friends who flew them. Many are here today, in fact, who flew the Nat. And they used to marvel at how they got in the aeroplane. And after they got themselves settled into the aeroplane, and it's a very snug fit, and complained about how tight the cockpit was, the instructor who was standing over them would then announce that he was actually going to climb in behind them, which he duly did. They became even more cramped. So things like personal freshness were obviously important. Some very, very old aeroplanes taxiing in front of them. Here come the Nats again. This aeroplane first flew in 1955. Teddy Tennant, who was a famous test pilot, did the first test flight. Is Captain Eric Brown, who could probably talk for an hour on this aeroplane.
In about 3 or 4 planes.
But it's wonderful to see this thing back in the air. They've had problems with the engine.
That's display tees. Is it?
Isn't that beautiful?
You've got the depth parachutes.
This is a unique sight.
I don't know. It doesn't say how soon.
All the way from Yeovilton. see if he can land it. It's not on a deck. Ooh. Pilot waving at us. No, that's not the pilot. Notice the torpedo under the fuselage? That had a significant part to play in World War II. And we'll be seeing the swordfish later in the day. Welcome back. We're going to play some appropriate World War I music as the World War I team line up and take off.
Shane, wait a second.
There's an SE-5 just lifting off now. An aircraft from the other side. There goes the Sopwith triplane. That's a 747 captain flying it, by the way. There we are with the other beautiful triplane. As the boys climb to height gently, let's ponder for a moment and think about flying aeroplanes in World War I. They didn't fly very well. Their flying controls were totally basic. The aircraft had many undesirable characteristics, and added to that, the pilots had probably got 1 or 2 hours flying time. Unusual to see a monoplane. The Junkers, of course, just got the one wing, because the stressing of such a wing was an extremely difficult task using early materials and with design at its current state of the art. So most aircraft were biplanes or even triplanes. It was a way of getting sufficient wing area into a relatively small span, which meant you could avoid some of the problems of wing twisting, which could lead to flutter. It looks like this Junkers here is well and truly done for. Notice a different camouflage. The Germans used this lozenge camouflage. One exception to that, of course, would be Baron von Richthofen, the Red Baron, who had a bright red aircraft. more adhesion when you land, which means keeping straight in a crosswind. I haven't got much of one at the moment. It's a lot easier on a grass runway, but unfortunately the grass here is a bit bumpy. So it's not the boy pilots who are making the aeroplane bounce, it's the ground. So, oh, isn't that beautiful? As the triplane now, very slow, but notice he's still bouncing a bit. There's not really much you can do about that, but the runway's much smoother, but harder to land on. Very impressive flying there. And just 2 more to land. We're delighted to see this team back. Last year they had another commitment and we missed them badly. They have serious wind limitations, which means we can't always cope with them because we really only have one runway direction when the show is on. Our cross runway is occupied by parked aircraft, and I hope you'll go along and look at the static display of parked aircraft. We've got some 30 or 40 aeroplanes. Here's our ex-jumbo skipper. Let's see how he lands this thing. Yeah, not bad. It was one of my students and he seems to have got the hang of it. He was also my local trade union rep. He was a very good man indeed. That's Gordon Brander. I'll pass on that applause because Gordon will come by this way in an hour or 2 to get his lunch, and I'll tell him you all applauded his landing. And hydraulic systems, very, very close formation partnership indeed. You can imagine the pilot underneath all the time. He's watching his colleague in the cockpit roof, literally a foot or 2 above him.